Yet, yesterday I heard something, a sentence that said, but how is it possible that intelligent people do such stupid things? Understood. Like, how is it that people who have a high level of education, are well educated, a great ability to understand, to be able to just to understand things, see things, make choices. People who are very intelligent. How is it possible that they can make choices that hurt themselves and others so much? It's like how can two intelligent people fight between them? It'd be the same question. We we need to distinguish between being intelligent, understood as having knowledge, having an ability, a conceptual ability, con- um, a well-developed conceptual ability, and then our emotional intelligence. They're two different things. Unfortunately, we live in times where we give a lot of importance to rational intelligence, and we don't give enough importance to emotional intelligence. Our ability to be stable, to face our anger or envy or jealousy. And so when we look, very often the things that happen and the things that are done, you don't need to go far, look at wars, you know. Let's just start with what's close to us. If we see the conflicts, the fights that come about, most of the times they're not created because of lack of knowledge or because one is not intelligent enough. I mean, every once in a while that comes about, but mostly it's because most of us often we don't know how to manage our own emotions. Often we don't have an emotional stability that allows us to to live harmoniously with ourselves and with others. And Rinpoche talked about this a lot. The first time he talked about this was in 1996. I was living in India and I received a book. Um, um, I received a book by Rinpoche, um, and it was How to Live Better in the Third Millennium. It was about emotional intelligence and non formal education, because we are used to giving an enormous amount of attention and emphasis on knowledge and developing our rational selves. If we look, I mean, how many hours do we dedicate at school and then at university, etc., for for just gaining knowledge and this ability to elaborate data, to go and understand this and make equations and understanding other things, writing and reading and writing, but we give an enormous emphasis to knowledge for knowledge's sake and our ability to use this knowledge. We receive an education that from on one side, you know, it helps us also find a job, to find a place in society, you know. So we're used to spending 8 hours seated at school, and then it'll be easy for us to then sit for 8 hours at work, and um, because if you're not used to being if you're not used to sitting down inside of a box for 8 hours a day as a child, if as your childhood and adolescent, if you're doing all of this, then you're not going to complain about having to sit also in a box sitting on a chair for work. But I don't know, a child who grew up differently, you know, out in nature or in the fields, I don't know if he would manage to spend 8 hours working like that. So we're used to it. Uh, you know, it's like, you know, you know, you need to get used to. We're used to things since childhood. It's nothing wrong. It's this is how our society um, is 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 used to it. You know, so Rinpoche talks about bringing this missing part to us. This is what we need to cultivate, and we've given a lot of energy, and we continue to give a lot of energy to what 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 I do and what I understand, and a lot less to what I feel. But this is an extremely important part. Even a modern thinker. I was reading one of his books. Harari is his name. He's a contemporary writer, one of the more well-known one, also historian. He was talking about the future, and and looking towards the future. He was saying that our future is so uncertain because the changes are so fast that today a young person, I mean, it's difficult to tell him what to study because there's a high probability that in 10 years' time or even less, that profession that he learned would become obsolete. Will be, it would just is not. uh, the only the most important thing that a young person needs to learn is to have emotional stability, because one will need uh, during his lifetime will often need to reinvent himself. And to reinvent yourself, you need to have a strong emotional stability. These emotional skills to be able to have um, stability, to face situations, stay calm, reinvent oneself, see what to do, adapt oneself to the rules that we find ourselves faced with. And this is a very, very important aspect, I think. Taking care of this aspect, this part of ours, which is not about knowing or doing. You know, you know, you know. I mean, we even think that we know how to do better than two generations past. Um, you know, now we have this external hard drives, external memory. We think that we know more, but if you take away this external memory, the cell phone, internet, etc., um, if if we need to do research without internet, we wouldn't even know where to begin. Um, I remember years ago there was my grandparents. One of their great qualities is that when they were there talking between themselves at home, what I never saw them talk about others. I I saw them talk about all sorts of things, history, science, so many things, but never about the lives of others. And every once in a while, it would happen that they wouldn't agree. My grandmother would say something, and my grandfather would say something else, something specific in history, for example. And at that point, my grandmother would call her sister, who who. No, she lived until about 96. Now she's left. She's she's passed. She was a physicist, and her husband was a student of Einstein, and so she would call her sister, who was incredibly intelligent, and she would go on to Google. So, but you see that there are people who read and learn and create a certain level of knowledge that is um, that is she wouldn't actually go onto the internet. She was Google. She would say, I'm calling Google, because she had developed all of that, a very high level of knowledge. But just for us, look at telephone numbers, our inner memory, for example. When we think about an external memory, the more I the more the more information I put inside, the less memory I have. And normally it's like this. If I have but for inner memory, it's not like that. The more I use this ability to 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 memorize, the greater the space becomes. It's like a muscle. The less I use it, it atrophies. I remember as a child, you know, I you know, this was pre the time before cell phones, and we had to memorize telephone numbers. I even I remember some cell phones. I remember some telephone numbers from that time, and instead today, I don't think it's just for me, but it's really difficult to memorize a phone number because we have this external memory that does for us, and we're using less and less our own ability to memorize, and so we're we're just more and more superficial in our way to perceive things. So it would be important in general to use our memory. When we train our memory, it's difficult, but then it wakes up the mind more. I've seen this studying in the monastery in India where we needed to memorize a lot. And memorizing keeps the mind alert, awake. But my point is, today it seems like we know a lot of things, but it's not really true because we have a lot of external memory and that we trust. And the problem here is that when I when I know where to get information, but it's not inside of me, it means that I haven't elaborated, I haven't digested, I haven't integrated it into my worldview. And when I need to make a decision, when I need to discern and say, this is like that, this is good, this is not good, the resources that I use to be able to make this choice or make this discernment are what I have inside of me. I'm not going to go on to Google, to research it first. It's very immediate. And so what's happening is that we're more and more susceptible to manipulation. We have less ability to choose for ourselves and to discern. We have fewer inner resources. But this wasn't my subject for today. But my point here is that it's fine, to study and acquire knowledge, but emotional stability is extremely important, and we need to take care of it. It's important to give value to it, to cultivate it in our daily lives. This is a fundamental point. And here we have two different worldviews. There's a worldview where, let's call it Western. It's a linear world. It's a it's a it's a view where, one thing happens after another, and it's practicing. Here's birth. This is point A, and at a certain point there will be death. That's point B, and who knows? Maybe there'll be a point C. Maybe it's heaven, hell, reincarnation, whatever it is, but it's a linear view. Then there's a cyclical view. It's more Asian or Oriental. In this, there's point A in the birth. There's a point B, his death. But point A and B, it's almost like, it's a curve, and then they meet each other. So when point B finishes, then we pick up point A again, and then it's a cycle. Things repeat themselves, where it's not it's not just one opportunity that we have. We live, we die, we are reborn, we live again. You know, life is cyclical. And in reality, this difference in view brings an enormous difference in the way that we live and see everything. It seems something maybe philosophical, but it goes much deeper. Because when something is linear, I live it just one time, and we even say life, is lived just once. We just live this experience once. That's not, you can't repeat it. But in that case, what's important is what we do. What do I do? What do I create? We need to be productive. We want to do. When instead something repeats itself, and so it's not just once, but it repeats itself innumerable times, what happens? It's not it's what I do is not important, but how that experience transforms me, who I become, becomes important. And this changes everything. Because just think about the simple cycle of the day and night. We wake up in the morning, we live our day, we go to bed, we wake up the next day, we live our day, we go to sleep, we wake up the next day, and we just go from day to day. The things we do very often, they just end there. Or I said things, I made choices. Obviously, the consequences will interact and come. The results will come about in the following days. But that experience is over. On the other hand, what happens inside me, what I become, if I go to sleep with a deep sense of sadness, and I wake up, when I wake up the next day, is that sadness still there? Yes. And even if I forget about being sad, until I resolve it, it's going to stay. It comes back. And the same thing in our body. I do something one day. If I hurt myself and I go to sleep the next day, that pain is still there until I treat it, until I cure it. So, given that every morning we wake up, what becomes important is not what we do in the day, but who who is it that woke up and who is it that's going to go to bed. The I the ideal thing would be that every night I go to sleep being a little bit of a better person than the person who woke up. So every morning we wake up where we have a little bit more of what's good for us. So our main job that we have is not about being productive or doing many things. It's fine. It's part of life. It's part of practical necessities that we have, the society we live in. We need to maintain our commitments, of course. But a fundamental point is how do I transform myself every day? Because inevitably we're transforming ourselves. We're changing. And every experience that we live every day cultivates our being, our identity, but also our emotions. And also our knowledge, but there's an emotional part of ourselves. And unfortunately, I see in many, many people a strong level of conflict between what one thinks and what one feels. Very often there's this inner dialogue, this inner fight between what one thinks and what one feels. And when it's when and that emotional maturity requires um, a, um, a balance between these two, and not that the our rational self needs to um, overcome the or overpower our emotional self, but there needs to be balance. And so our we should look at our habits and our emotions and stop nourishing, at least stop nourishing the ones that are bad for us. So we need to create favorable conditions, and those are created not just when we're in having pleasurable moments, but also creating space, let's say. Let's try to see it in this way. Our conceptual mind, etc., is as if it was more on a coarse level, and our emotions, our feelings are on a more subtle level. And every once in a while, to be heard, they yell. When we're very much in contact with this rational part of ourselves and our reason, um, it's difficult to feel what's coming, what we're feeling on an emotional point of view, what our feelings are. And so to be able to come into contact better with what we feel, just in a few words, what we need is silence. Silence from what? Silence from distractions, from all the sensory contact with sensory distractions, and this constant coming into contact with information. And we're used to constantly consuming and using up information. We're always looking at something, we're reading something, we're listening to something. And we're in constant contact, just gobbling up things. In the morning, we pick up our cell phone and reading the news, to read the news, or we read something, but often it's not it's not an attitude of reading or listening to something to reflect on it, to deepen something, but it's very often our attitude is just about just using it up, just coming into just I want to distract my mind, find out what's going on, and this continuous of using up, information brings us to a state where there's no silence, there's no space to be able to show and take care of our emotional parts, our emotional side. It's not for nothing that if we look, that for centuries or even more, if someone wanted to 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 look at himself more deeply, one would go to a silent place. To, and it's not just about a silent place; it's about the the distractions, and these distractions are our own thoughts. Imagine a place where there's a lot of noise, many different types of noise, or even here. Let's imagine that at a certain point we have like an electric drill, or we can make other noises, like scratching the microphone. Just imagine many strong noises, and then there's also the sound, the noise of our breath. Are we able to hear the sound of our breath when there's so many other noises? No. we're not, but it doesn't mean it's not there. When the others, the louder noises calm down, it seems like that other more that other softer sound, it becomes stronger. It just is easier to perceive actually when the others aren't present. There's an example of there's this kind of room, this chamber where there's no external sound. And after a while, a person's there, someone starts feeling and starts hearing the inner sounds of the body, the heart that's um, the heart, or even the sounds of like bones creaking, and apparently it's really difficult, and no one has been able to stay there longer than 40 minutes, but it's very bothersome on a certain level because that those the more subtle, those softer noises are can be heard. So being in silence is beautiful, but it can also be very tiresome because when we allow these softer sounds to, these softer sounds of our feelings, of our emotions, that that we don't listen to usually because normally we ride on this more conceptual level, Sometimes things that we don't really want to listen to manifest. But it's important for us to see to see what to see what we need so that we can nourish ourselves in the right way. Because a fundamental point is when we talk about helping and giving and generosity towards ourselves and also towards others. First, before I give something, the first question I should ask myself is what is needed. And so when I look at myself, before I do something for myself, I should look at myself and ask myself, what do I need? And to know what I need to listen to myself. I need some silence. I need to feel that because no matter no matter how much we give, if 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 that need is not fulfilled, then the need remains. Like last week, I heard. Um, is the lesson I gave last week. Buddha described 4 types of generosity: giving materially, generosity of giving love, generosity of giving protection, and the 4th is a generosity of giving the Dharma. And it's interesting that these 4 types of generosity exist on the basis on 4 types of necessities that we have. The deepest one is the spiritual one, but we can't take care of our spiritual needs if we are not in a situation that where we feel protected, and so there's also so there's and sure and secure, and we would not be able to feel protected if we were not in a stable emotional state, the minimum, which is this third necessity, um, which is the second one. And then we wouldn't feel that if our material needs weren't met, which is the first. So we have a material needs, and then emotional needs, and then of security, of protection, and then the 4th one is our spiritual. If if we can resolve the 4th one, then the others resolve. But someone who is someone who has fulfilled himself spiritually is able to stay even in situations where material needs aren't perfectly met, etc. But we need to first cover these first 3 types of necessities to get to the spiritual needs. If we look at this example, it's a classic example. think about two people who live together, like husband and wife. Often it's this we we refer to the man, but not always. Maybe the man who offers so much materially, but on the other side, it's she says, "Oh, but you don't take care of me. Um, you don't you don't give me affection. You don't give me any time." And the other one says, I give you everything. I work all day, for you, and you like going out to eat. You like having a nice, um, mm, you know, you like having a nice house. It's not that I don't give you anything, but you're not happy. This is kind of a classic complaint. It's not that the other one isn't happy because it's not what he's receiving is not good, but it's not what he needs. Because what's that the first level of necessity is material one. But what is that? Is having food and a place to live where we can be protected and take care of our health, and here we are. I mean, to yeah, have our minimum survival covered with a little bit of comfort. But once that necessity is covered, it doesn't matter how much more I give materially, it's not going to cover the other needs. So if I have an emotional need where I need affection, towards myself or also within my relationship with others, from others, it doesn't matter how much I increase my material resources, it's not going to cover the emotional ones. Maybe we're doing a lot for ourselves, but we're giving to ourselves what in reality we don't need because that need is already covered. This is something I see very widespread in our society. We're continuously giving to ourselves richness, material things, we buy things in continuation, etc. And very often we try to suppress this emotional need, and cover it with the material one. I'm feeling sad, I'm going to go buy a pair of shoes, or I'm going to go online and buy something. I'm going to stimulate my senses, and it just doesn't resolve our needs. So there's a very simple question, simple but not easy. And we need silence to find the answer. And the question is, but in this moment in my life, what do I need? And we can divide that into 4 types of needs: material needs, emotional needs, security, protection, and spiritual needs. And let's ask ourselves, what needs do I have? Probably in many different areas. But if I have emotional needs, I need to take care of myself with affection, with love. I need to take care of that aspect. If I need security, I need to create a context and find a place where I feel secure in this world. And if I have that, once I have all that, don't if I don't nourish also the spiritual part, then one will find great dissatisfaction. Um, um, and when that spiritual part is not nourished, one says, okay, everything is fine. I feel, all my needs are met. I have good relationships with other people, but there's a deep sense of lack of meaning. There's a kind of emptiness, where one doesn't understand, what one is doing. And this is when the spiritual needs are not covered. So it becomes really important for us to ask ourselves what we need. And what I see is that materially speaking, for most of us, luckily, is the material part is covered. But we continue to accumulate. We continue to cover the other needs with with that first one of stuff. Mm. And and it, the reality is it doesn't work. Also, it's not so easy to get to that second level when we talk about this emotional part of ourselves. And forgive me if I say what I'm about to say, but many of us, when we get close to Buddhism and the spiritual path, very often we're not ready to 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 take care of our spiritual self. You know, we're we're using the spiritual path to take care of our emotional needs. When we go to look, for example, the teachings, if you look at them in very specific to this path to enlightenment, a starting point is is a stable emotional state. Um, you know, even the state of renunciation is high level, where we're not victimizing ourselves, and we have a high sense of self responsibility, self awareness. We know what mental defilements are bad for us. I mean, so these are states that require a high level of balance and emotional development. So we should ask ourselves really, what do I need? And give ourselves the space to find the answer. Let's not hurry up the answer, and and to give an answer, to find an answer. Silence is important. Allow ourselves to be quiet, to be in nature, and let it not be a conceptual answer. Instead, something that we really feel. Once we see this, at that point, let's try the tools and the resources to nourish that part. I see very often that we have a conceptual, rational part of our being. But as we said at the beginning, this emotional side of ourselves i- is is um, weak. So we need to dedicate time and energy to it, because we are like muscles, and according to the movements we do, we adapt to in one way or another. So depending on the way we move in our daily lives, we're shaping our mind, shaping our being in one way or another. So this for this it's important also to recognize our positive sides and identify with them and try to cultivate them more and more. But we need to listen to ourselves, first of all, allow ourselves to be able to feel what's inside, to be able to take care of ourselves. And the same thing happens when we need to take care of someone else. When we have another person in front of us, it's very important before doing anything is asking ourselves, what does this person need? Ask the other, what do you need? Allow ourselves to see the other person. Because very often our objective is not to help the other person, but often just we want to be the person who helps. I don't know if this is clear. Very often when we do something for someone, where we we take off a burden, we see suffering, we don't like it, and we want somehow take away the weight that we're feeling, or do something to take the weight off of us. But the fundamental question is not what do I want to do, but what does the other person need? Is it material? Is it emotional? Is it a need of security? Is it a spiritual need? Um, but in this moment, what does what is he ready to receive? Is he ready? You know, okay, no, I help only spiritually, one says. No, look at Lama Ganchen Rinpoche and how he acted. Rinpoche was there for everyone. You know, he was a father for those who needed a father. He was a mother for those who needed a mother, a friend for those who who needed a friend. He would say, first of all, I'm a friend, and then if someone wants also a spiritual a guru, I'm there too. So and so we need a deep, deep sense of humility, of humbleness. This, you know, we can't assume that we know what the other one needs. We need to allow ourselves to see better. And often the other doesn't even know what he truly needs, but at least we need to have this attitude of not assuming that we know, but we ask the other. You know, we open ourselves up to being able to see the other person, and the same thing for ourselves. It's very interesting to see how this attitude, the attitude towards others and the attitudes towards ourselves, they're very similar. Even towards ourselves, allow ourselves to to ask ourselves what we need, and not 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 have this certainty that it's like this, it's like that, I know what I want. No, there are times when we're not listening to ourselves. I think it's happened to everyone to have reactions that one doesn't understand well why. One maybe judges himself and doesn't doesn't allow any time to understand what had happened. Maybe much later it becomes clear. But it's important to be able to listen. Listening is fundamental. When there's some kind of manifestation of malaise, physical or mental or social, there's this show of malaise. You know, it could be verbal, physical, whatever it is. Every time this malaise comes out, our question should be, why? What's behind this? What is this showing me? It's like if we look at a war, we see, we're just watch. We see the news headlines, and when luckily we're not looking at the war. I imagine that we all want the war to end. I imagine that I say everyone, but most of us, we want that the war to end as soon as possible. But do you know? But do we ask ourselves, oh, this is a siren, this is an alarm that has gone off. What is it showing us? What's behind it? And if we don't look and we don't take care of what's behind all of this, that siren is just going to go off again and again. When there's a social, physical, emotional, or economic malaise, there's a sign that something is not balanced, something is not going well. And to it's important for us to listen and try to find out what's behind that. That what's the message? What is it that should be done differently? That's not right now. What's difficult, not impossible, but difficult, is that when an alarm goes off, you know, the message, it has to do with things in the past, not in this present moment, and because you know the you know the flames are already there, the fire is already burning, but I need to go and see what the causes were to start that fire. We need time and great sincerity with ourselves to understand what's behind, what generates what generates our own dynamics. And sometimes we're not going to be able to understand, and that's fine. These are the times these are times where we need to concentrate. We say, okay, I am not able to understand why I feel like this. I'm trying to listen, but I can't find a solution or an answer that satisfies me, where I feel like this is what's right, this is it. But we should at least try to not nourish that state and put our energy into what is good for us, what benefits us in a different emotional state. Because we're made of habits, you know. All of this to get to this point, to say that at the end um, we develop the parts of ourselves that we give importance to. We develop, you know, where we put our energy is where we develop ourselves. And we live in a society where we give a lot of, we put a lot of emphasis into what we do, and and knowing, and understanding and doing. And we should put more energy into feeling and being. This is what I think. This is a, a, a very important aspect that we should take care of, I think. We should live our lives in more, it's in a cycle and less linear. And what we do inside, and let's remember that what we do inside this cycle, that what we do is fine, but let's remember that we're going to come back to it again and again. And so what we do during the day, you know, it's 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 not it's more important who we become at the end of the day, and not really what we do. Obviously, that our life, even if we're walking, um, even if we, if we're walking, even in the cycle, you know, there are lots of, it's not always in one direction. We go up, we go down, we go up, we go down. What's important is that we're always walking in that same direction. And just to conclude, we should ask ourselves, what do I need? And try to allow ourselves to find an answer, even if it's not immediate, so that we can take care of that aspect. And if we don't know what we need and we can't find the answer, let's try to go by exclusion. Okay, okay. Do I need this? No. Okay, I'm going to exclude that. And let's remember that our needs are four, you know. I mean, of course, you can then can divide them up in many ways. But if we look at these four types of needs, it's easier to direct ourselves and understand, what we need in this moment, according to what we need. And I mean, that's what we need to give ourselves. Okay. So it's time for our dedications.
Jetsu Lama Kutse Rapten Chin Nam Karatin Le Chokchur Gepadang Losan Tempe Drume Sasum Ki Druwe Munsela Taktu Negurchi Kewa Kuntu Yanda Lama Dang Dralme Cheki Pela Longche Ching Sadan Lamge Yunten Rabzone Dorje change kopan yurtobo sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin nintsen takto delek pe kuncho sumke jingi lob kuncho sumke ngodrubo tsol kuncho sumke trashi shun.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the true jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Tashidele. Buona giornata a tutti.
Have a good day, everyone. Tashitela.